Recording in progress.
All right, good evening. It is 7 p.m. on August 8th, 2024. I'm calling the Lunenburg Finance Committee meeting to order. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel and on Facebook Live on the Public Access Facebook page, and will be uploaded to the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. This meeting will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast, unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in any specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. The following information is provided for members of the public that would like to participate in the meeting remotely. To participate remotely from a computer, please use the link below to join the meeting. From a telephone, dial the toll-free number 888-475-4499 and enter webinar ID 821-9502-9392. This agenda lists all topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by open meeting law. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Are there any announcements from the committee this evening? Excellent. Do we have any public comment from the public?
Good evening. Anna Lockwood, 91 Main Street, speaking as myself, since I'm no longer the chair of any commission. I'm going to quote a couple pieces of text here. It will be brief, with my accent, which goes a little slower. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America, the preamble of the Constitution. Another short quote, which I'm pretty sure I'm going to stay under 3 minutes. This one is from the Gettysburg Address, which it says, it is rather for us here, dedicated to the great tasking remaining before us, that from this honored dead we take increased devotion to the cause for which they gave their last full measure of devotion, that we are here highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall now have a new birth of freedom, that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall now perish from this earth. So, I think the United States Constitution, the Gettysburg Address, is very powerful documents. And I think, in a smaller level, what we do every day as volunteers of this town is represent those wishes. We the people, for the common good, for the general welfare, that, a government of the people. And that part is interesting because I actually think that part is very important because it is a representation. When you're there volunteering, you're not there volunteering for yourself, for your causes. You're there volunteering on behalf of the people. And I actually find that to be very powerful, even more than the remainder. So then your last meeting, you guys, this group voted to not take, it was a 3-3 vote, to not support the request to fund 9 hours for the rec director. And there were many reasons why that request came at that point, and I had logged in so I could tell historically when I was the chair, town manager was going to fund that position an extra 9 hours. And the last minute, she pulled that in order to save money for the trash contract. At that point, I, as the chair, approached her and I said, can we please look into doing this at town meeting, but using the revolving funds? And Heather said, yes, that's a possibility, but we can do that after town meeting. Everything has been published. We just don't have the bandwidth to do it with the override and everything else. She needed to present 2 budgets and so forth. So the Parks Commission waited for town meeting to pass and then started working with her. So that was the reason that came afterwards. That request came after. The town manager was going to fund that request before, and when she said no, I requested if we could fund it from the revolving fund, which is a self-funded position. So that's the first thing. The second thing was, these were the 2 issues that I heard this group talk about 2 weeks ago. The second one was, well, this account is not supposed to be used this way. And then we went on a long litany about all the history behind it. What interesting to me is that 6 months ago, you approved that account to fund salaries and benefit for the Town Beach employees. Every year for the past 6 years that I saw, because I asked for that information from Ezekiel, every year for the past 6 years, I can tell you that account has been used to pay for salaries and to pay for benefits. It's right there. So all the excuses and the explanation why that wasn't done, I think when we get in a position, and this is my urge for you, and this is going to be my urge for the select board, is instead of saying no, if you have questions, let's ask them and wait for that question to come and then take action. Because you approved a budget for this year, FY 2025, that is funding salaries. Period. You've been doing that. That has been the common practice of Lunenburg. So before we say no, let's ask questions and give time to answer those questions. Then I'm going to go back to why I read these 2 texts. It's just we really need to be compelled to serve the people as volunteers. And I really believe that, government should buy new trucks for the school. If the school can use a used truck from the PW, I think they should. And I'm going to be pressing on that. Government should function for the benefit of the people. And if we are doing things that are not for the benefit of the people, not improving the general welfare, we should not be doing it. That's it. And to say no to the people, to something that will benefit the people, really gets my blood boiling, as you see it. 3 weeks later, I think we were doing this. So my ask for this group is to, I don't want to say leave your egos outside, leave your thoughts outside, but act on behalf of the people. And I'm not saying that these contradictions were done on purpose, but before saying no to the people, please ask further questions. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments from the public this evening? None. Any public comment from the committee? Excellent. That kind of meeting. Okay. Finance Director report.
The only report I have is to discuss the Cemetery Commission funds, so I will hold until that time.
Perfect. That brings us into new business where we have a discussion with the Cemetery Commission. So a couple of months ago, the Finance Committee talked about plans for the summer and what we would like to try and accomplish. And one of the objectives was to meet with the Cemetery Commission just to get a better understanding of how the financing works through the Cemetery Commission. Since it's all a little bit vague to us, we know that we approve the sale of cemetery lots for $10,000 at annual town meeting, but beyond that, what does that mean? And just basically, what are the practices of the Cemetery Commission and how does the funding services work? So I've invited the chair of the Cemetery Commission, Ms. Fasco, thank you for joining us, and Ezekiel's here as well.
I want to say thank you. Thank you for having us here, Cemetery Commission. I'm the chair, and we're honored to be here and answer any questions that we can for you. I think the most important thing is to maybe let Ezekiel do this first, and then we can see if there's any questions or anything you'd like to ask me. Does that sound fair?
That sounds great to me.
Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Ezekiel.
Let me pull up the presentation. Okay.
Okay, so the purpose of this document is just to go over the fiscal rules and provide clarification of the regulations established. The Cemetery Commission adopts a schedule of fees for permits and other services privileges provided to owners. The current fee schedule is available at the Cemetery Commission's town website, and so tonight we'll go over sale of lots, which is GL Fund 8115, the capital article that's voted at town meeting, Fund 3006. Cemetery Perpetual Care Trust Fund, the principal, Fund 8001, the interest, Fund 8000, and the Cemetery Gift Fund, Fund 1548. Actually, I already went over the purpose. So.
You don't want to read the Mass General Law?
No, I've already went over it, yeah. No, go ahead. My notes were, so if you want to go to the next slide, sale of lots. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. So sale of lots, per Mass General Law, Chapter 114, Section 25. The proceeds of the sale of lots or rights of burial in such cemeteries shall be paid into the town treasury and be appropriated to reimburse the town for costs for the land, its care, improvement, and embellishment, or the enlargement of the cemetery. To assure continuous day-to-day operations and streamlined process for the community, the sale of the lots shall be handled by the cemetery superintendent. The cemetery superintendent shall adhere to the Town of Lunenburg's turnover policy regarding protocol and report any receipts to the Cemetery Commission along with other pertinent information as required. So for refunds and expenses, no refunds and expenses shall occur without a majority vote of the Cemetery Commission. All refund requests provided to the town accountant myself must also be accompanied by documentation of said commission approval. Any questions before I move on?
Yeah, can you explain that first paragraph,
Sure.
please?
The first paragraph is actually a quote for the Mass General Law stating that any proceeds from the sale shall also be, it's pretty much speaks for itself. It's the sale of lots and proceeds such shall be paid into the town treasury and be appropriated, which is in Fund 8115, to reimburse the town for the cost of land, its care, improvement, and embellishment of the enlargement of the cemetery.
How is that being done? How is that being done?
So when the sale of the lots funds, there's a sale, the turnover from the cemetery superintendent gets sent over to the treasurer, and that goes into the fund. Any expenses, any refunds or expenses regarding the cemetery needs to go through the Cemetery Commission for approval before it goes out. So the actual revenue turnover is handled by the superintendent, but the expenses are approved by the commission.
Can you explain the reimbursement part?
Sometimes, let's say a family moves out of town, they bought a plot, and they will need a reimbursement because they will no longer live in town. So that would be a request for reimbursement. That's just an example.
but it says the cost of land, its care, its improvement and embellishment or enlargement of the cemetery.
Correct.
That's,
Correct.
is the town being reimbursed somehow for that work?
No, the reimbursements are specifically for whoever no longer needs a plot. The expenses for any care or embellishment come from this fund, but they need to be approved by the commission. It's not a reimbursement, it's an actual direct expense. So
So if somebody doesn't
there's two
want
different
to-
things going on.
So if somebody is basically selling their lot back to the town, they're getting a reimbursement?
Correct.
Does that happen
Let
very
me,
often?
let me just come up there for 1 second, because I was just given this tonight, and it will show you exactly what we get on the cemetery commission side, to show exactly, for someone who's out of town, and they want to have their lot, they're not going to use it, they get in touch with us to find out, and then through that process, it will be determined. If they've only been there, we'll say for 2 years, and the perpetual care is there for X amount of dollars, we might give them back the perpetual care. It depends on how long it's been there. If it's been there for 36 years, let's say, and someone decides that they're moving out of town, we're not going to give them that perpetual care because it's been taken care of all the years for those 36 years. So the most they'll get back is, again, what they put in for, what they paid for their plot at that point in time. And then it has to be voted on by the cemetery commission. There should never be that, again, I guess there's never the word never, but I can't see a situation why, if you're moving out of town, why we would say, no, you can't have your money back and you have to be buried here, so.
Mr. Chair, also, I'm aware of at least one instance where a family actually exhumed a body, moved it out of town, which left their entire plot empty, and asked for a refund. So it's not done every day, but there's some extremes occasionally.
And just for clarification, the cemetery superintendent is the DPW director, correct? Or is it-
No, it's a separate superintendent.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is,
There's a cemetery department that falls under DPW,
okay.
but the superintendent reports to the director of DPW.
Ah, see, I learned something already. I always thought it was just the DPW director was automatically the cemetery superintendent. Got it. Okay. Any questions on this?
Yeah, if I could just
Sure.
add a little bit to it, and correct me if I get off on a tangent here. To Jay's question a little bit further into, the refunds come out of that account to reimburse the public when they give up a plot and it's agreed to by the commission. But the additional money that's in there is drawn by, I believe, it used to be voucher, approved by the commission, and then paid directly to a vendor for services. So the money does move out of that account to pay expenses that the town incurs.
When somebody returns a plot,
No, they're two separate things.
two separate things?
Yeah, they're two separate draws off the account. One is a refund to the owner or family owner of a plot.
Okay.
The other is, say, the DPW director or the cemetery superintendent comes forward with a voucher to pay for tree removal as part of the maintenance of the cemetery. If the cemetery commission approves that, then it's drawn out of that account to pay for it. And
Okay.
other items, including, down the road here, we're going to be looking at an expansion of North Cemetery, and we should be seeing some money coming out of that account to help offset that.
All right, next slide, capital article.
All right, capital article, Fund 3006. Through a warrant article at Lunenburg's annual town meeting, a transfer from the sale of lots account is requested. The funds are to be used for the care, improvement, embellishment of town cemeteries beyond what's in the scope of the normal sale of lots. Once voted and established, the town accountant, myself, shall transfer the balances as specified by the warrant article and report back to the Cemetery Commission that the transfer has been completed and the funds are available for use.
So with this one, as the planned expenses that it's meant to be drawn from it is similar to the last one, is it actually going into the same account, or are these separate? I know you have those listed different funds. They are separate accounts then?
Correct.
Right.
But you pull from both of them to cover improvements and embellishments and whatnot?
Depending on, again, depending on what we're paying for as far as, when I say we, I mean the Cemetery Commission, what the Cemetery Commission is charged to do and is voted on of what we're going to do as far as for the embellishment for the cemetery, if that's when they put the niche wall in and when they put the building in. There was, you know, they went to and they got the warrant article for that amount, and that's how, you know, again, that's how those things were paid for at that point in time.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
it does.
Okay.
Do we use this account then for kind of day-to-day maintenance as well then, if it does include the care of the lots? Or is-
No, because the day-to-day maintenance is being taken care of by the, from the way the charter is written, it's taken care of by the DPW.
Okay, so this is strictly for sort of project-based work?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And this is the $10,000 that we do?
Correct.
And is that the maximum that we are allowed to do? Is there?
No,
or how
I
did that
mean,
actually come
when
about?
the years that they did the niche wall, we used pretty much, meaning the Cemetery Commission used a lot of that money was used for that niche wall, because that was at least 50K or more. I want to say, I'm just remembering back, I want to say it was around 50,000 or more, so it pretty much took them down to almost the penny. In fact, I think at that point, it did go in the red. Is that correct? And that's what we don't want to happen again. I mean, the Cemetery Commission does not want that to happen again. Ezekiel and I have talked about this, myself having an MBA and then Ezekiel doing the finance piece of it. I want to make sure that we keep this, that we keep that good and solvent. And look at projects that really need to be done and so on and so forth. And that's what we've done.
Excellent. Thank you. Other questions about this one?
No, I think I'm good at this point. We'll have a later conversation. I don't know if it's in this meeting or if we have it planned for later, and that is the investment strategies, the sale of lots account, I'm sorry, perpetual care account, which is probably next. Okay, when we get to that, that account has a substantial amount of money. I'm preempting things a little bit, but that has a substantial amount of money that cannot be touched. So it's a solid savings account that's not going anywhere and should be, in my eyes, aggressively worked on for growth.
Let's find out about it first.
All right, the Cemetery Perpetual Care Trust Fund. So there are two factors to this fund. First, I'll go over the purpose of the Perpetual Care Trust Fund per Mass General Law, Chapter 114, is for the overall care, maintenance, and development necessitated by natural growth and ordinary wear. A portion of the proceeds from the sale of each grave or burial niche is designed for the Perpetual Care Trust, is designated for the Perpetual Care Trust Fund according to the fee schedule adopted by the Cemetery Commission during the budget process. The use of the Perpetual Care Trust Fund is under the purview of the Cemetery Commission only. So there are two factors for this. The first one is the principal, which we have identified as Fund 8001. It is not expendable. The Perpetual Care Trust Fund principal is set aside only for investment, Mr. Passios just mentioned. The second part of this is the interest, where you have identified as Fund 8000, which is the expendable portion. The interest earned thereof is used to provide perpetual care. Only the interest earnings from the funds can be utilized to support costs associated for the cemetery operation. Interest earnings may also fund capital improvements associated for the cemetery.
Anybody else have?
What portion of the lot sale is put into the perpetual care fund? Is that,
I don't have the fee schedule in front of me. It's actually on the Cemetery Commission's website.
So what you would see is when the sale of lots, you will have that half of it goes to the town and then half of it goes to the sale of lots. As far as the perpetual care, again, we'd have to see how that calculates and that goes into the perpetual care funding. But as, again, Dave had stated regarding this funding, I think the Cemetery Commission has been watching this and really would like to see more information as far as how much are we actually earning, because 219,000 is not a lot of money in there for X amount of years that it's been there. I would, especially with the banks today, I know that the market is up and down, but you can find a bank that would be 5%. This percentage here is about probably 2.2 of coming in, and that just is not. We'd like to grow that more and more and more, because out of that, then we can have the interest, and then through the interest, and then we can do more things for the cemetery.
As far as interest rates go, that's one of the better ones in town.
Right,
I
right,
think our highest is 5.3,
right.
and it's on like a $80 account.
Right, right. But I think, again, I think we can all recognize that somehow, is it to really go and really look at the numbers and find out where else we could do better.
So in order to, so the Perpetual Care Trust Fund, the Fund 8001, even though it says non-expendable, but if it is under the purview of the Cemetery Commission only, are you ever able to pull money out of there?
No. As far as my understanding from the Mass General Law, the
Okay.
answer is no. I think I asked that question when I first came on, and no, the way they have this, we can only spend the interest, and that's it.
Okay.
I know, people look at this and say, well, why aren't you using your money? Because we can't. And we're very grateful, like I said, with the, trying to get the sale of lots, because there was a time, like I said, when I first came on, and they had just done the niche wall, and they had done the building, is that we were very low. We had hardly anything. So again, and we know there's definitely some things out there that need to be done. And one of the biggest one, I know to a lot of people, it's very important, it's important to us, is the 1700s to 1800 grave sites. They are crumbling. We know that. We need help, and we need to help to get that started. The Cemetery Commission has put together 2 projects for the APRA funding. I don't know if we'll achieve it or not, but we did put it in there, and one of those is for that 38.5 for just to do those gravestones and how to get started, phase 1 and phase 2 of that. So we're hoping, and if we don't get through with that, then we'll have to come back to the Cemetery Commission and decide, X amount of dollars to see if we can start that process.
Do we know if the town owns those stones? I have a reason for asking the question, but I will not be able to go into it this evening.
Say that again, Dave. You're asking if we
Do we
own-
know if these stones that you just discussed, has the town taken back ownership of those stones?
I don't know.
I expected you would not be able to answer that question because I know it's never been asked. I will come back in a couple of weeks with a little bit more information.
Okay.
And hopefully we can find out if there is even a mechanism in this town to do that.
Okay.
And then we'll dive into it deeper later.
Okay.
wouldn't it be kind of moot because we already have to care for it? We have perpetual care, so whether they're ours or not, we still have to care for it.
In my readings, that's not true. That's why I'm asking the
What's
question.
not true?
That the town is required to
Maintain the stone?
maintain the stones.
So when you're talking perpetual care, you're talking about...
And this is the first time I've mentioned this since I read it, so, everybody's in the dark about what I'm saying right at the moment, but I will do my research and I will bring the references and so on.
Now, there is one caveat to this that I spoke with Leominster Monument. We were talking at General, and some of the stones that are there, I'm very sad to say, are broken to the point I don't know if we're going to be able to repair them. So my next question to them was, okay, if we can't repair them, we know that error is slate. I guess my understanding is the slate prices have gone out of sight. So you're looking at a stone, one stone can be anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. Because my next question to them is, what was that going to cost us to, maybe help with some of these stones? There's no way, that if you have X amount of stones at that kind of price. So again, it's something to talk about, but it's my understanding that's how much it is for those slate, and that they are slate in that era.
As far as reinvesting those funds, is that something, because it's under the purview of the Cemetery Commission only, is that a task only for the Cemetery Commission to do, or does our treasurer then have, or accountant have the ability to reinvest those funds as well?
Without the approval of the Cemetery Commission, we're not allowed to. So if it comes to the point where we're asked to reinvest, we'd have to bring it to the commission, and they would have to vote to approve.
Okay.
Again, I think we'd all work together to get the best of the best, to get the best price, to get the best whatever. I think that's a no-brainer that we need to do that. The sad part is, like I said, it hasn't really fallen on to us until Ezekiel and I were really talking and how to best help. If it's a cemetery commission, if it's another commission and or committee, how we can make more money for this.
Excellent. Yeah, that's, it's on our topics later on tonight, and the Budget Task Force just heard about it as well, that we have $27 million as of FY23's closeout, earning pennies.
Right.
So, any help would be very much appreciated, I'm sure. Are there any other questions on Perpetual Care Trust Fund? All right. Cemetery gifts.
Cemetery gift fund, we identified as Fund 1548 per Mass General Law, Chapter 114, Section 25. A town in which cemetery commissioners are chosen may receive gifts or bequests for maintaining cemeteries or cemetery lots, which shall be paid into the town treasury, and with the accounts thereof shall be kept separate from the other monies and accounts of the said town. The town of Lunenburg may receive gifts for maintenance of cemeteries and cemetery lots. These gifts must be turned over to the treasurer and is maintained, I read that twice, sorry. The expenses. No expenses shall occur without a majority vote by the Cemetery Commission. All refund requests provided to the town accountant must also be accompanied by documentation of said commission for approval.
Questions on this one? It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Do we have any issues with any of those earmarked funds ever?
No,
I mean, it sounds pretty well written that if it's earmarked for it, it goes to the Cemetery Commission.
Right. I can tell you that now that you just brought up about the earmarking piece of it, in 2023, as William Tyler was the chairperson, I was the vice chair, but I was trying to see if we could get our representatives to give us, again, earmark some money for us for the cemetery. And there were 3 different projects that we came across. I'm hoping when I call Michael Karishmerek that we, possibility, if there's any hope that that's ever gonna come through. It was large amount. One was for the monument restoration. One was the whole stone wall restoration for both north and south, because they are starting to show their age. That one was that project was priced at $197,000. The reason that that was a little higher was because there was one area that the cemetery superintendent, DPW director would like to see it redone because they feel in time it's going to collapse. So that was probably most of that money that would be going to that. And then the other piece was the wear and tear of the grass and the grub problem that we've had. That was an additional $50,000. So that whole year, or that whole timing, was about $285,000. I'm hoping, again, and I will check into that to see if there's any hope that that could be something that could come our way too. And that has been earmarked since last year.
Okay. Is there any federal or state funding available for cemeteries?
To be honest with you, I'm sure there's some out there that we're missing, to be honest with you. We need to, and I think Heather had brought it up, the town manager, to have someone come in and really look at, for the whole town, as far as the different committees, what we were looking at to see if there's any grants. And that's something that probably we haven't done enough of.
Okay. Do you know if Chapter 90 funding is available for any of the road care in the cemetery?
That would be wonderful, and I don't know the answer to that. I would think we'd have to find out from the DPW director on that one, because there are some areas there that need help.
And the land is owned by the town, correct?
Correct.
Okay, the plots are owned individually, but the land itself, the access ways, all of that is owned by the
Correct.
town. So if it is a roadway, I would think it should be covered under Chapter 90.
Unless there's an exception in the law, but
True.
it's worth
It may
looking
need to
into.
be an
if you
approved
want.
road.
Well, we just have to name the roads then. Leominster has named roads in their cemeteries.
Well, they have the roads named in there.
There are named?
Yes, there
Okay.
are. Don't ask me to
That-
name them all, but yes, they
That
are.
doesn't mean it's an approved road for public travel.
Okay. So there may be a caveat in the Chapter 90 law.
The other piece too is that once the Historical Commission moves forward and gets the entity on board that's going to do the historical locations inventory of the town of Lunenburg and gets that registered with the state and/or federal government, that will be opening up grants through that process. But it's got to be documented and registered before those grants will even take an application.
And just so you know, regarding that, as Dave has stated, I have reached out to Richard McGrath regarding some pieces to make sure exactly what Dave had just stated, that we are on the register. I've looked into as far as I could. It looks like part of it is, I'm just not convinced that 100% that we've got that. I'm not sure if that's 100% correct. And that's what we need, the help with the historical piece of it.
Okay.
And there is one more piece that, and I don't know anything, only a small amount, it's my understanding that there is a subdivision that there was 3344 West Tarrant Street, I believe, that there is another cemetery, a small one, that will be appearing if, again, it's my understanding there's a lot of work that has to be done on it. The legal counsel was working on it. We've had nothing to do with it at this point in time. I've tried to stay, again, just finding out about it from the town manager leaving and sending a letter to us. I think it needs to be, I think someone needs to tell us when it's our time to either step in or do whatever regarding it. I know right now that it is, again, sitting neutral at this point in time. So I don't know how far they've come with that or not.
No,
Were you aware of that one?
not at all. So thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
They found some graves there. Somebody had purchased the home, and then they had gone in, and it's my understanding that they had the machine, the GPS that goes in and kind of finds the grave sites, and there are several grave sites there. So that will be, again, if it goes forward, that will be another town property of cemetery.
Questions or
Yeah,
comments on this one?
that situation's been going on for a few years now, and, you know, it seems to flare up every once in a while, but there's never been complete resolution to it, so that's why it sits in neutral.
I'm assuming these are very old graves? Like, I mean, these aren't like 50 years old graves. These are things before we had a cemetery commission and all that, and people just bury people.
I literally don't know anything about it. I was just, like I said, before Heather left, she sent a note regarding it and saying you need to do this, this, and this. Again, until I'm told what it's all about, what we're doing with it, who's, again, who on the side of the legal counsel has been looking into this, and to bring it up to either the select board or someone, and then know what the plans are, because I don't know what those plans are. I just wanted to make sure that you knew on your committee that we know nothing of this, except for what, you know, we've only been told. And the only reason that Bill Tyler was brought in was because of, on the historical side, not because of the cemetery commission side. And that was, like I said, a few years ago. So as far as I know, nothing much has gone forward with that.
1800s.
Is there interest and drive to actually resolve it?
I think so, but I mean, again, what is it gonna take? Because the bank gave this person a mortgage. How do you do a mortgage when you've got part of your property has got a cemetery on it that they may have known or they hadn't known? So I think there's a lot of legal issue there, possibility that needs to be resolved and looked into. You know, again, I was given this letter by Heather stating again that there were some people that were looking into it, and that they were negotiating. I don't know what you can negotiate when, again, the legal side to it has to be done first, I would think. And that's not our purview. They can tell us when it's time to take the step forward, but I'm not gonna comment on something that I don't know anything about.
Right.
But I'm just bringing it to your attention so you at least know as much as I know, or maybe you can find out more.
Dave probably can.
Yeah, Dave can.
Is it a substantial, do you know if it's a substantial portion of their yard?
I don't think so. I think, if I remember correctly, again, when we did have a small conversation about it, I want to say that they found 5 or 6, maybe? Dave, do you know?
I've never gone into detail on it because it was so vague. The only thing I remember is that I think some of the stones were buried, and it was kind of felt that they were intentionally buried.
Yes, yes. That's...
Interesting. Any other questions on this one?
No.
All right, we just have the references. I think that finishes up this one, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Any other questions, concerns for the Cemetery Commission?
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to discuss just a little bit further from the overall presentation is that, as Mr. Chair, you asked if that $10,000 number is locked in, and the answer was, no, it's not, and that's correct. It's just, when early in the budget process, the Cemetery Commission and whoever's in charge of cemeteries, as it changes over the years, have a conversation as to, well, what do we think we're going to do in this coming fiscal year that we're budgeting for? Do we need more than $10,000? So that conversation is had. So that's where that number, that vote for town meeting, that number comes from. If they know they have a project, like say down the road now here with the possible expansion of North Cemetery, they want to pull a little more out of there to help offset the cost of that, it may be $20,000. But that number can fluctuate based on that conversation and what's put in the article at town meeting.
And is that typically voted on by the Cemetery Commission ahead of time for that number? Okay.
Yes. And then, and exactly what Dave had just stated is, I think we try to be very careful, especially where, again, in the years prior that they were in the red, and we wanted to make sure that never happened. So, we're only going to take out what we absolutely have to, and where you can do it twice a year on the warrant articles, if there was something that we needed to do in the fall. In fact, just so you do know, is that Mr. McGrath is going to help us finish Fish Street. And it's my understanding that I think in the month of October, November, I want to say, he will be putting a stone wall around, and he is giving the time to us, but we will be buying the material for him. So again, we're making sure that, we have that money available for him to, to finish that project. We've been trying to do that for a few years now, so. And it's important to, again, Fish Street is part of this town, and we want to make sure that the south, the north, and Fish Street are very well taken care of.
Absolutely.
We're actually lucky, the town in northern New Hampshire that I spend a lot of time in has 7 cemeteries. They're spread out over the entire town.
I mean, it sounds like we have more than 3, more than 4 now.
Yeah, we have what I describe as satellite cemeteries, yes.
Yeah.
And they're, basically what they were, I think, was farm property burial grounds.
Yeah, that would make sense. All right, final questions? Is there anything that we can do to help out the Cemetery Commission as we sort of already get started for budget season?
No, I think just keep us informed if there's something that, that you think that, we should be involved in, or something. I know that Jean has brought up again, it's very important to her, which I know is about the 1700, 1800, and they're very important to us too. I'm sorry that, again, that, we haven't gotten that off the ground yet. I'm hoping that we can, because it is important. It's important to our veterans. It's important to the loved ones that have been there for generations and generations. So I think anything that you could, lend us if you hear something, or you need something, or you want to ask a question, please feel free to, reach out to us. We'd be more than happy.
Excellent, thank you. And I have a feeling that there'll be a request for the Cemetery Commission to consider moving funds.
I'm sorry?
I said I believe there will be a request of the Cemetery Commission to vote on moving funds at some point, hopefully after December 31st.
Okay.
Assuming that the Budget Task Force can stay on task and report by the end of the year.
Okay. And we'll have to, like I said, it's all of us voting, but again, we'll take what your thought process are. We are important.
I just had one quick question. When I was looking at things and I hit on a link and it gave the fees, $800 for a lot, is that right?
Correct.
Is that something that's reviewed? Is that something that's, and there's other fees too for whatever. How, has that been reviewed recently? Is that
Yes.
Okay.
We just did it, I think, when Bill Tyler was on, and I was, so about a year or so ago, we did do that, and we did bring the prices up, because we went to the different towns to see where their prices were. So 2 lots obviously would cost $1,600. There's some that's a little bit higher than us, and there's some that are lower, so we try to stay in that neutral. And I think the main point at the time that we were bringing it up was very careful, because it was around the pandemic, so it might have been a few years even before that, that we were trying not to, cause families any more hardship than all of us had gone through at that point in time.
I was more concerned if it hadn't been changed since 1931 or something like that, those kind of things.
Yeah.
How are we, this is a moderately morbid question, but how are we doing for space?
So that's a good question. Right now, we have a software, which is Rainmaker, which is Sims, and I ran some reports the other day, and we have a discrepancy. What I'm trying to do is find out exactly where we're at, because if you don't know the numbers, you're not going to be able to know when are you going to expand the North Cemetery, because it's looking like in the next year or so, we're going to have to do that. But I don't want to say that, because again, until the person who handles that goes in and checks everything to make sure that it's correct. That's why I had the software on the phone with us, because there was a discrepancy with a few things. So that's what we're looking into now. I want that, we need that we need that count to be correct, because without that, you can't make a good plan going forward.
Right.
So that's important.
Do we have space to expand on South or Fish as well? Or is we just?
I don't think you're gonna have, I don't know that past where you go into the very back part, I don't know what that will cost us to, and I don't know if that's even possible to do that. That is probably, we don't have a lot over in South Cemetery. I think right now, I wanna say, maybe with a few that we're buying back, it may be, you know, close to maybe 15, maybe 20, but I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to
Yeah.
quote that and not knowing. But I did run, that's why I ran the report, to see where we were. And that's the scary part, is we're getting close, and I think that we're getting to the point that we do need to start thinking of that. And that is the other opera funding that I put through, is to open that up. If that's what the committee, that's what we voted on to have as a project, because we're recognizing that it's gonna take time to get it done. So if you say 2 years, then we've got to start now.
Right, right. Okay. Final questions? Going once, going twice? Thank you so much, I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having myself, and obviously having the finance director here, so.
Always helpful having him around.
Yes, I know. Thank you. I hope that helped. It did very much.
All right.
One quick question, Ezekiel, do you need the entire committee to sign this, or is it a minimum number of signatures?
Majority?
You have a.
1, 2, 3, 4, you got it.
Do you want to sign? Well, Jay didn't sign it yet.
Huh?
Jay didn't sign it yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What is it?
Yeah, you'll have
Sorry,
5
what we voted on
once he
last
signs.
time to transfer 15,000 to the,
That's just a written approval of last meeting's vote for the 15,000 for the town manager search. It's going to go into the select board contracted services line.
all right.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Ezekiel, are you able to stick around for the investment strategy discussion? Okay, thank you. All right, moving along. Next up is a personal letter written by the chair of the school committee. You should have a copy of it over here. So, Mr. Leighton, if you want to come on up. Mr. Leighton is the chair of the school committee. He has been hearing us talking about the health insurance policies and being somewhat antiquated in their opportunities and available plans, and not having a high deductible in an HSA plan. He heard the discussion during budget season and all sorts of things, and nobody was doing anything, so he took it upon himself to draft a letter. And he is kind enough to share it with us, and has asked for some opinion, some feedback, and is looking for someone to, I believe, I don't want to speak for you, but someone to champion it at some point. So, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for putting on your agenda.
Oh, you're red on the button there.
Thank you, and thank you for putting on your agenda this week. I appreciate it. It is challenging as a school committee member too, going through negotiations that you can't negotiate healthcare. So after talking with the former town manager, she had kind of went through the process of that it was really up to the unions having a meeting and voting for any changes on the healthcare together, not just the teachers union. She had also recommended that we could use the healthcare agent to review or ask questions about policy change too before we get to that vote of the unions.
All right. So, for this document, are you looking for just, at this point, are you looking for some opinions on it, some thoughts on it, questions? just kind of workshopping it in a sense?
Yeah, it's definitely a first draft, definitely looking for feedback. I think one of the main ideas of going about it was that I wanted it to be an additional option. I didn't want to force a major change in healthcare plans that forces people into a certain avenue of a healthcare plan. So this idea was to add an additional option of healthcare options. That way people could still stay on their current healthcare option, but people who are looking for a better value or to save more money on premiums or to get an HSA. I know a lot of people, even Mr. Menard had talked about the benefits of an HSA during your meetings. There are people out there who would benefit in having an HSA and being able to save money that way.
All right, so I'm going to read through just sort of the highlights of it. I have it posted as well, or I'm sharing the screen. So it's number of features in the plan. First one is lowering premiums, having a high deductible health plan. That's what HB stands for. High deductible health plan will have lower monthly premiums compared to traditional health plans, resulting in increased savings for employees. These savings can lead to more take-home pay, providing employees with additional financial flexibility while still maintaining access to essential health care or health services. As far as the town contribution goes, the next line down, these numbers, just out of curiosity, where did you pull these ones from?
So I work in a district that offers an HSA plan, so I used similar numbers.
Okay. Do they have Maya for their health insurance?
No,
MIA?
no.
Okay. Be interested to see what we can come up with for health insurance.
Well,
plans.
that's why I think that, again, first draft, I want to have the agent look at it and definitely review numbers. And
Right.
what makes the most sense for our district.
Okay. And is this saying that this is 50%, I assume, correct?
Yes,
Is that generally what the employer will cover?
that's what I've seen.
Okay. If anybody has any questions or comments or changes, please jump in at the same time.
Yeah, I work for a municipality that has this, they went to it a few years ago. It's an option, you know, their contribution is they do it, you know, 1,000 for individual and 2,000 for family plans. But obviously on your deductible, it raises that. Your out-of-pocket expenses, and then it's what, like 2,000 and 4,000.
Yeah, I would definitely be open to adjusting numbers
Yeah.
as needed.
But
I was, where I had worked, I was on a committee that actually worked with a consultant that we had hired to look at this. High deductibles are a trend over the last 10 years, I think. And so I got to learn a lot about this stuff because we made a change at the company I worked at over a couple of years from a lower deductible to a higher deductible. Told the employees about it, how we're going to do it, why we're going to do it, how we were going to, it was very similar to this. The benefit of the lower premiums, actually, you know, the goal was, well, in your savings of your premium, you put that money, your pre-tax money, into your HSA, and you can build up a fund, and over, you know, you'll have more than enough to cover the deductible. So it was a education process, it was a selling process somewhat, but the goal was to get people to get more involved in their expenses, and that's what the consultant told us. That's why, you know, if the first $3,000 is coming out of your pocket, then you're going to be a lot more careful about what you do. That was the theory behind it, at least back then. So I think this is a good thing. Now we didn't have unions. You have unions, you have different types of unions and all that. I think when you're doing this, you have to explain the benefit to the employees. And there is benefit, because ultimately, I think if the costs get too high, then the town is going to have to either, make decisions about how much do we pay and versus what they pay, or how much can we pay for your salary if we're putting all our money into health insurance. So they have to understand that this is for the good of all. And this isn't trying to put and it shouldn't be, trying to put an additional burden on the employees, but try to figure a way to do that. So I think that's the process, and I think this is a very good process, and it's probably something you shouldn't try to do, in 1 year. Say, okay, we're doing this today, and tomorrow we're doing this. I think it has to be over a period of time, maybe a year or two, where you can introduce this and get people ready for it.
I would agree. I think education is definitely going to be important, and I think not forcing people to make changes, educate them and make them have a choice in the matter. Even for me, it was educating myself too. I had to talk to my HR director about, me and my wife were having our third child, and we were on an HSA plan, and I was concerned that it was going to cost too much to stay on the HSA, that we should switch before we have the child. And the numbers actually made more sense to stay on the HSA because we were saving so much on the premiums that it would cover that deductible.
I think the learning curve actually can be handled pretty easily. My company, when I was working, during my time at my company, we had an HSA, high deductible plan come out, and I think we had 4 or 5 different opportunities to have a conversation with the rep that would come in and explain everything to us like we were 3 years old, and finally it sunk in about how they work. But I think, our employees will certainly be able to get a handle on it pretty quickly. Is there, from the school department side, and actually this may be more a question, I guess, for the unions, I'm not quite sure who it would be for, has there been any conversation among school staff about the opportunity to have an HSA or a high deductible plan?
I am not aware of any.
Okay.
You could reach out to the union leader or Dr. Burnham as well.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I've got the comments I sent to you the other day. I'd just like to read that through quickly because it states exactly what I felt after I went through this whole thing, and then a couple other quick comments. My only comments to this proposal is if the deductibles in this program are considered high, someone needs to look at private sector programs, especially the out-of-pocket annual max. This program is still very low. Also, the town's contribution to HSA is double what I've seen in the private sector in some policies. Lastly, I will need to be made clear that the town's contribution to the HSA account, unless I'm incorrect and it comes under some other tax laws, is income to the employee, and they will get a 1099 each year for that part of the money that goes into that HSA. That's what happened with me and with my HSA. I got a 1099 at the end of the year for the amount that the company contributed, not for the money that I put in, because that's pre-tax. So I just throw that out there. It may be different depending on, where this policy is being administered, where it be in municipal or collective bargaining agreements or whatever. But that's one thing that just people need to be aware of, so that at the end of the first year, they get a 1099 from whoever's administering the HSA account that says, oh, you owe income tax, you need to put this on your 1040 federal form. Just for information. That's the only reason I'm throwing it out there.
It's interesting, because I never received a 1099 for mine.
I think what most employers do is as part of their, it is income, but it is, when you get your W-2, there's a line, there's a box in there, so it's in there. I think, because I remember that did come up with us, and our, I think it was ADP, they said that's how they handled it.
Yeah, actually, I stand corrected. I got the 1099 after I retired and took the HSA with me. So that's why I got the 1099.
You were worrying me that I was going to get
We're
audited.
getting paid.
Yeah, and like I said, the numbers in here for the deductibles, they're incredibly low as far as I'm concerned. From what I've seen, I know that there are some federal employees that have a $9,000 out-of-pocket before they clear their deductible.
Wow.
So, you know, this, I don't know how it compares to the collective bargaining medical policies that are out there, but this is good compared to some.
And like I said, I would be open to suggestions. I think it would be great to hear from the town's health insurance agent as well. I do think we should also make it an attractive program so that people do want to join the HSA, a high deductible healthcare plan, because it will, again, save the town on premiums as well.
Do you think this could be something that you could get a group together, maybe employees, like a union reps or somebody, and the town management and school to get together and have a discussion and maybe build a plan with maybe a consultant? Because to me, the devil's is always in the details. You know, if the premium goes down a little bit and there's a bigger deductible, then no one wants it. But if it goes down enough, then it becomes very attractive. So it's all about the numbers, not the process, not the, you know, what we're looking at here is maybe few numbers, but the real numbers that they're going to be able to present. And that's, you know, and what employees and what the town or the school department cares about could be different. So having everybody as part of the discussion might be beneficial. I don't know if it's possible, but.
One other quick comment that I just remembered, that this does not address in-network and outside-of-network costs, which many policies have a different deductible for. Again, I don't know what the collective bargaining policies look like, but that's something in the private sector that you really need to pay attention to. And it's more from the patient's point of view that that person needs to know that, oh, if I go to this hospital, I'm going to be paying into a $12,000 out-of-pocket kitty rather than the $6,000 or $5,000 or whatever it is for in-network. So there's a balancing act there,
Yeah.
too.
And I think that would have to be addressed through the
Yeah, there's
healthcare
two
company agent.
deductibles. There's this deductible, which is the $4,000 deductible, which the insurer doesn't pay anything until you get to $4,001.
Right.
The other deductibles are, well, if you go to the hospital's emergency room, there's a $100 deductible, but if you go to the urgent care, there's no deductible. They push you there. It's the same word, but a different meaning. So it's not part of that deductible. So it's, at least that's my recollection of it, is, so there'll still be that. I mean, the goal for the insurance company is to get you to go where it's cheaper, so they can save money, so they can offer lower premiums. So they'll put incentives in like that for that, and you know, and so out-of-network would be, well, the same thing. Out-of-network is more expensive for the insurer, hence you're going to pay more.
One other piece I've seen, as you've been mentioning these things, they come back to me. Over the years, I think I've only had one policy actually in changing jobs that the annual deductible, the number, that upfront number that you need to reach, one of them included prescriptions. So they didn't pay a penny for prescriptions or other medical procedures until you hit that deductible. In some cases, I mean, that gets you past that deductible pretty quickly because some of the medications are $700 a month, you know, so, but that's just another variation that's up.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason that the high deductible healthcare plans aren't for everyone, and that's why I'd like to see it as an option versus making everyone go to a high deductible healthcare plan.
Could be an option.
I would be curious to see if, so from my experience as well, these numbers are actually pretty close to in line with what my company is. I think we're $2,000 deductible for the individual and $4,000 for the family, and my company kicks in $1,500 and $1,000, I think, something like that. $1,500 and $800. I'd be curious to see what the insurance rep comes back with, if there is a cost saving for the town in the long run, if there is a number of people that do end up taking this, or if this ends up costing the town more. I know it saves people money, but somebody has to pay for it somewhere. And I'm concerned that we might have the town having to pick up the extra money for that one. I'm not sure. So that would be my biggest.
I would be surprised, but yeah,
I am-
definitely, that would be a good question for the agent.
The last thing I would want to see is, sorry, your bill just went up another $1 million, just because we're covering everyone's deductible. Yeah, otherwise, I think this is a fantastic start, and I think it should be put into place, at least sent out to the rep and start the conversation for this year. Just get the process going. But I would be curious to know what employees think. I don't know how we can.
I wonder, for process-wise, I almost think contact the rep, get feedback from the rep, then we
Yeah.
can reach out to the union leadership and then see what they think, get feedback, make adjustments if needed, and then organize a meeting for a potential vote.
I'll just make a general comment. The exciting thing to me about this conversation and some of the other conversations in meetings that I've sat in the last 2 weeks is that we have folks seated, kicking around ideas, looking into things that we've always done it this way, but is it the right way to do it? That type of thing. I think we've finally moved into a mode where we're all concentrating on, are we really doing it the right way, and what's it going to take to change to bring the town into the future? And I am very excited about that.
Well, at least to the 1990s. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
Get out your floppy disk.
Are there any other questions or comments? Feel free, I'm sure, to send Brian some messages directly. Obviously not to everybody in the committee, but individually, feel free to send him some notes on it if there's anything that you come across when you're reading it. As far as adoption of a plan, I believe that rests in the town managers
I believe so.
entirely. I think they have all the authority to do that. I don't even think it's a select board vote. I believe it's just the town manager that
Well, this would have to be funded.
correct, but it's funded through your health insurance plan bill. So if it's not a large change to the annual cost of the health insurance plan,
Well, the town's contribution side has to be funded somewhere.
and that's kind of why I don't know. That's my concern is, does the town's contribution side increase or decrease with this plan?
Well, if the town's going to contribute 800 or 1,600, they've got to have that money on top
Well,
of
I
paying
think-
for the,
I think the idea would be that the town is going to be saving on the premium, so it will cover
Right.
that cost.
Right.
well.
Ideally,
that
the
has to be
premium would
wa-
cover.
Yeah, but that has to be weighed out depending on how many people
Right.
want the plan.
Right.
I mean, I think it's a
But-
good idea to have the option, but health insurance, there's not one plan that fits everybody.
Nope.
And, sometimes, even though if the numbers look good, it can be a hard sell. But
I agree. The more information we can get, the better. The more numbers we can get, the better. So what would you like to do next with this?
So I think the next step would be to reach out to the interim town manager and have them reach out to the health insurance agent rep to take a look at it and give feedback.
Okay. Are you looking for, go ahead.
Well, I know in my town, they had presentations done, and, the rep came in and had a whole slide presentation, and they set up, a couple of different meetings. I mean, this is a smaller town, so they probably only, and, they said they did a whole presentation on it. You gave people the opportunity to ask questions.
Before it was done or after it was already
When
an
they
option?
No, when they were trying to make it an option.
Okay.
When they were offering it, because the town was pushing people to go to it to save on the premiums. Yeah, they had the reps come in and do a full presentation.
Okay. I would certainly be in support of that. Are you looking for the support of the finance committee for this, or are you just kind of showing it around?
Really,
shopping it
just,
around?
it's for your advice, yeah.
Okay,
Looking for as much advice and opinions as possible, and then, again, just trying to keep moving it along.
okay.
So is there our insurance person, the person we work with, that would be the first person, and this isn't reinventing the wheel because it's been done by a million companies already, so they should be able to figure out what the right thing is, but also give you advice on how to, how to have a discussion, because I think Jay's right, that you have to have, employee buy-in, you gotta, oh, what, you're increasing, I don't want to do that, well, let me explain, and have them do that, it's vital.
Yeah, I think it's going to be multiple buy-ins. It's going to have to be buy-in from the union leadership to even just accept the plan, and then after that, to have the members to actually take on the plan.
And also make sure that they have input, the union have input, because it might be, well, you can do this or do that. And if the union say, well, we want this, and say, okay, then that makes sense, let's do that. Then they have input, then they have buy-in, it's easier to have, you have somebody in the union that's going to support it. Oh, yeah, well, we figured it out together, rather than they threw this on us and now we got to either accept it or not. It's, I think it's very important.
I agree.
We have Maya as our health, yes, but the companies are on HSA, they're separate from Maya, aren't they?
So, in my personal opinion, from my experience, it's the same companies. So the idea is, it's all one group, but it's just a different plan. You're just paying for a different plan.
Including the
Through that
HSA
company.
as well?
Yeah, the high deductible health care would just be a different plan that you could be offered.
But they-
So I have Harvard Pilgrim. People who don't have the high deductible plan still have Harvard Pilgrim, they just have a different plan.
And your HSA is managed by Harvard Pilgrim as well?
No, the HSA is the
Okay.
the
Separate
savings
company.
account.
Right, right.
That
I was
my
going to
money
be
is-
really concerned if an insurance company is
Yeah,
handling my
that's-
investments.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's,
So the HSA is really just through, like, you could even do it through, say, a bank. It's like,
Right.
it's just an account that holds the money.
There's actually an HSA bank that exists. I've got my account with them.
Is there anything prohibitive in the union contracts that would not allow an added healthcare plan?
I am not aware of it. Again, through our negotiations, we have never negotiated healthcare as an
Okay.
option. So that's the challenge that we've had as a school committee, is you can't negotiate healthcare. So that's why we're kind of going through this avenue, or I'm going through this avenue.
In a way, that makes it easier, because since the school does have the largest percentage of healthcare employees.
Well, I think it's also a challenge too, when
Right.
you can't negotiate that going through negotiations.
All right, any other thoughts for this one?
My position at this point is I totally support moving forward, getting the information and talking to the professionals and see where it takes us all.
I agree. Thank you very much for putting this together, and you have my full support as well. I think this is a great first step, and thank you for taking the lead on it. I appreciate it, because it wasn't getting done over here either, unfortunately.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is investment strategy discussion. So the reason I threw this one back on here again is it came up at the last Budget Task Force Committee meeting. We were going over revenues that the town has, and from the town side and from the school side. Ezekiel and Renee put together a great presentation, and Kate and her team put together a great presentation on that as well. With the town side, we ended up getting into that there was money in investments that we could, or interest, somebody asked about interest, and I brought up the document from FY23. This document right here. Which I believe we'll be getting an FY24 copy pretty soon. I believe it is just getting finalized. But this is the state of of all of our different accounts, which we looked at 6 months ago, 5 months ago, something like that. I'm very curious to see where they stand today. And the conversation was, we have $27 million sitting across a whole, or at least we did. Who knows what we have now, because ARPA's in here as well. We had at the time on June 30th, 2023, $27 million sitting in all of these accounts, earning absolutely diddly squat for the majority of them. Like I said, our 5.3% interest rate on $84.47 is probably not doing us very good, versus our 0.1% on 175,000 or 343,000. And so I just wanted to start the conversation again, because I did make mention that it was one of the Finance Committee's main goals with the Budget Task Force was to really look at this and find out why we're not investing more smartly, gooder, betterer, to actually get a decent return on all of that money. That there must be somewhere that we can put the money, or different ways that we can invest the money, potentially with more risk. I think even with moderate risk, you could get much higher returns than 0.5% or 1%. So I wanted to kind of have the conversation here so that I could sort of bring it back to the Budget Task Force and have some questions for them, or some options, some ideas about what to do next, who to talk to. We spoke a little bit about, do we talk to our investment companies? I think Bartholomew was thrown in there to see what they have for ideas. We could reach out to them. And nobody really knew if there was anything limiting any of the accounts in Mass General Law or anything like that, other than the trust funds.
Yeah.
The one thing looking at the list and where it is, it's probably a very complicated answer to all those questions, because, you invest money based on how long you need to invest it for. So we were just talking about the perpetual fund. Well, that's never going to be used, so you could stick that in, within reason. You could stick it in a long-term thing because you're never going to use it if you can get a better yield. You might not want to if you think interest rates are going to go up, because that would be better to then wait over there. So that's where you need somebody who knows a little bit about those things. But a lot of it is, you're going to need some money at some point, you don't know when, so and it's all different uses. So it's a complicated thing. Also, just an FYI, I just happen to know this, is that if you were going to invest in a CD, it has to be with an FDIC insured financial institution. Can't be a credit union because they're NCUA, and the law specifically says FDIC. I worked for a credit union, and we got written up for having an account for some towns, and we said, well, we're NCUA is just as good. It doesn't matter, the law says FDIC, which it did, so we had to, give back the money and let them do whatever. But it's very complicated, so I think, but I think it's definitely a place that you can generate a lot of income, especially now. Maybe 2-3 years ago you couldn't, now you can. So there needs to be a person or people that do that and figure out, well, what is, for this money, what do we need? This is money that we're going to need, this $3 million, we're going to need $1 million over the next 3 years. Well, that means I can put $2 million in something longer. Okay, that's fine. Well, who does that? What's the process? Who knows the right information? It's a complicated thing, but it's a very if you do it right, you can generate a lot of income, and that's every dollar you generate in additional interest is $1 we don't have to collect in real estate taxes, or $1 we can give back in higher insurance payments or higher salaries. So there's value there.
I guess the question I would have for Ezekiel, so when we actually receive interest statements on these accounts, if we're not spending out of them, how does that get reflected other than just through this document and at the end of the closeout of the year? Do we have any plans in place to spend other than obviously the 8,001 with the cemetery, or the 8,000? Do we have any other of those kind of interest-only accounts set up?
To be honest, I don't have all the answers for all the accounts. I know particular accounts, they essentially fund themselves, like student activities. We have, the Parks Revolving Fund, PEG Access. There's a lot of niche in there. And like Thomas stated earlier, there's a lot of complicated master general laws. It's depending on the type of fund that's set up. So having a professional looking at the portfolio might be the best route to go as a whole, and just kind of do a deep dive in a recommendation. I wouldn't have that answer for you, though.
Would you recommend going through one of our, like Bartholomew, for example, to do it, or would you think an outside firm would be more effective?
Bartholomew might be a good place to start, maybe it's a lot of money to go through, so maybe putting out an RFP, just depending on how much the town is willing to front for the cost for a consultant to go through, putting out an RFP and go through that process might be the best bet to get the best value.
Is there any idea what that would even cost?
I have
I have no
at this
idea what it
point.
would take for a company to go through all of these accounts and then cross-reference them against Mass General Law and then offer CPA advice.
Honestly, my thought process is because each account may have different criteria under Mass General Law or whatever driving force controls it, that it might be worth picking away at them one by one. Pick one. The cemetery money there really draws me to it because we can't spend it. It's just sitting there. It's like if you put it in your mattress, it's just going to sit there, it doesn't earn anything. Or it earns what it's going to earn. So if you can be aggressive with that, principal protected aggressive, it sounds like a no-brainer to me. Instead of going through and putting out this expensive RFP to review everything, do one account at a time or do a couple to get a feel for how it works. I really think, as I mentioned at the meeting the other night, I really think that all of these committees talking about this need to pick the library's trustees' brains as to how they did it. Because they did it over the last couple of years, and their return on investment has been great. Now, something just clicked into my head. I'm hoping I've got the right department because it might be PAC.
I don't know.
Okay, well, I'll reach out tomorrow and make sure. I haven't been telling you guys to go to the library when it really should be PAC.
Yours can have no idea what we're talking about.
So during the budget task force, I had mentioned Bartholomew, only because they hold those trust funds.
Right.
We could start there as the select few and have them do a review. I don't know when's the last time they did an actual review to
Yeah.
see the highest yield, but we could start there because they already hold those funds.
Yeah. Once we get the printout for the closeout for '24, I think we're going to see whether it's PAC or the library. Again, now my brain is questioning it. I think we're going to see a change in the bank that's administering that money. Because my understanding was that they interviewed Bartholomew and they interviewed two other investment banks, and they went with a different one, was my understanding.
Well, I think PAC goes with Bartholomew. I'm pretty sure PAC goes with Bartholomew.
Okay.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, you're looking at 23. This was
23,
done-
they were getting
It was done in 24, though.
0.75% on $720,000 with Bartholomew.
Like I said, I'll verify what I've been promoting tomorrow.
The library trust fund is through Edward Jones. They're getting 2.75% as of FY '23.
That Edward Jones rings a bell.
Okay.
compared to what they were earning in previous years, I think that's leaps and bounds above what they
Yeah.
were earning, so.
Well, I mean, our cemetery 8001 is sitting at, was sitting at $895,000 last year at 2.26% with Bartholomew. And that's the one that we don't ever touch.
Right.
The downside of doing it piecemeal, though, is you lose buying power versus going out there and saying, we've got $10 million to invest, or $15 or $20 million to invest.
Okay, well, my answer to that is then, one of the deep dive questions that needs to be answered is, how many of these accounts can you commingle when you invest them? Because I'm sure there's going to be some that absolutely not, you cannot do that. They have a better idea what you're,
Of course.
got for numbers to work with.
And there's definitely going to be limits on what you can invest in, as I mentioned before with the accounts. The state is going to, they don't want you to go invest in Bitcoin or something like that. So there's going to be, you can do this and this with this, so it's going to be very, and the negative to that is, risk and yield. The less risk you take, the lower the yield is. The more risk you take, the potential for higher yields, that's all. And this is, but the goal is to maximize our yield as best we can within the limits that they allow and our needs for the cash when we need it.
The interesting thing when you look through the list is the ones that have the highest percentage are ones that we only have a few accounts with. This MMDT, we have 5.3%. Bluestone Bank, we have one account with them at 4%. It's an investment account with $500,000 in it. And we have another 2 investment accounts, one with Bank Hometown and one with Enterprise Bank, both with close to $500,000. One's making 1.9 and one's making 0.01%. If those are 3 investment accounts at 3 different institutions earning 3 very different percentages, I mean, it's
Well, that would be a place to start.
yeah.
The easiest thing you can do, if you have Enterprise Bank or something like that, and I am on a board of a not-for-profit that does some stuff, and we had accounts at a financial institution, and our executive director met up with the person and said, we need higher yields, and they were given higher yields, because there were millions of dollars that we were talking about in money that we had with them, and they gave us higher yields. So that's easy. I mean, that's not easy, it's the easiest way, because they don't want to lose $5 million, or they don't want to lose, if you say, I can't, they won't do it, then you could go to, hometown and say, hey, what can you give us? And that's another way to do this. And that's just bank accounts, just, CDs or whatever it is, or high interest, high yield savings. Now, a lot of the financial institutions, you put in $1 million, we'll give you 3 or 4%. And it could change tomorrow. If interest rates go down, it could go down, but if interest rates go up, it could go up. So and you're not tied into a CD for 5 years, so it gives you a lot more things. So high yield savings accounts are another option.
We have quite a few accounts with Enterprise Bank. They all seem to be in the schools, and they're all earning 0.01%.
Why they make so much money.
Whereas we have a whole bunch with Main Street Bank, and those are sewer, trash, all of our enterprise funds, and they're earning 3% on $1.5 million, $1.9 million. So it's just,
Evan, did you say those first ones were schools?
Yep.
Yeah, again, until the deep dive's done on those, there's probably, I think there's a reason, because you are extremely limited as to what you can do with those dollars, and I can't speak to it any further than that.
But again, you could go to Enterprise Bank and simply say, we want a higher yield.
Yeah.
On the same account. They can go in and grant you a higher yield because you're giving them big chunks of money. And you've been a customer for X years.
I think if we can get to MMDT, that's the way to go. They're the ones that's at like 5.5% for everything. I don't know what they do, I don't know who they are, but,
You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, though.
no. But I put a decent amount of them in that basket. Newburyport as well. Unibank's not terrible. Bartholomew is good for some things.
Evan, what were the letters again? M what?
MMDT.
Ezekiel, is that the one that's administered by the state? Massachusetts something or another? Massachusetts
I'd have to get back to you.
Municipal,
Was it M?
President
MM,
Treasury?
MMDT, they've got our arts lottery, our playground fund. They have investment account, highway bond issue.
yeah, I think that's a state-sponsored fund.
And that's it.
Hopefully Tom will have it in a minute.
I'm just looking it up to see if there's anything in there.
Yeah,
It's Mass Municipal Depository Trust Publication.
there we go.
Depository and Treasury, yeah.
How do we get more money with them? It's just,
I just found it, I don't.
yeah. They don't tell you on there right away exactly how to get more
And
money.
again, Evan, what that's doing is it's pooling money from multiple sources to get good investment return.
Yeah. Fidelity is the worst one. We get 0% on that one. Actually, 0% on $127,000.
If you remember back when the collector treasurer was on with us a year or more ago, she kept saying, well, we trade off with, they waive fees
Yeah.
for a lesser percentage rate yield. But if you don't do the analysis as to how that affects you as to what you're really paying for fees, then it doesn't make sense. You need to know
Yeah.
what you can earn. And I agree with Tom, too, that if you just do what you've always done year after year after year and just let these accounts roll without questioning the bank and say, hey, rates have been up for the whole year, why aren't you giving us a better rate? Loyalty in many areas doesn't count anymore in our world, but I think in banks, if you have enough money in their bank, you'll get their loyalty.
Squeaky wheel, being the squeaky wheel. The other thing is that the fees are usually in checking accounts. That's where you pay fees. And so if that's a checking account, or you have your checking account with them, and then they save you $10,000 in fees over the year by giving you a little less yield, okay, that's fine. But I don't think most of these places, we probably don't have, those kind of accounts.
We have 5 non-interest-bearing checking accounts.
Uh,
Those are the Fidelity ones.
Oh, with Fidelity, okay, so maybe that's why, Fidelity, so all our checking is with,
No, then we have interest-bearing checking accounts.
okay.
We've got 6 of those. And then our liquid,
with-
Why do we need so many checking accounts?
interest-bearing checking account up here.
And a lot of them with Fidelity?
Fidelity, Unibank, and MMDT.
Yeah. Well,
And then we have,
What?
we have 18.3 million less the ARPA funds that have been, because ARPA's in there as well, in liquid assets, liquid investments. And there's a lot of those with very low interest rates.
right, so we don't have any checking accounts with Enterprise, we don't have any accounts with
Nope,
Main
with Main
Street,
Street.
things like that.
Nope.
So, yeah, I mean, these are the things I think, if you're getting 2% and you can get them to give you 3%, that's like getting a raise.
Especially if it's on $5 million.
Yeah. It's real money.
One thing I'd like to suggest for down the road, and this is after we get into this, or whoever's going to dig into it, comes back with what they've found out up to a given point, is that if it looks like it's going to need to be a coordinated effort to get this to happen for multiple accounts sooner rather than later, I'd like to propose a workshop between the Budget Task Force, the Select Board, and the Finance Committee. But we'd have to have something substantive to talk about, and maybe even have Bartholomew and some of the other key players in on that meeting, so we all get the same information at the same time.
Who has the, I guess, contact with Bartholomew? Is that going to be our treasurer? Is that going to...
Yes, it would be the treasurer. I also have contact, but even though I oversee, I don't like to overstep. That's
Yeah.
right or wrong.
Right.
Okay. So maybe it's time to reach out to Ms. Myers again and see if we can just at least get the conversation started.
Yep.
I think attacking it from two different sides is much better than just kind of letting it sit there and fester. That is going to be a tricky one, because that's why I was asking about how we can move the funds out of the cemeteries one, what that requires if we're going to reinvest it somewhere else. And I think there's probably more than one of those with these accounts in order to move the funds. I would assume sewer has some authority over theirs. Parks probably has authority over theirs. But,
Yeah, now their revolving account, that's going to be depending on where they go with that after our discussions 2 weeks ago, that account is probably going to need to be very fluid.
if we were going to have Bartholomew do this, could we even ask them to, in order to get an idea what it would cost to do this, we would have to put it out an RFP first, right?
We can put out a message to Bartholomew just to get a feel.
We can do that, we're allowed to?
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of like a
It's not an
budgetary
actual
consultant
RFP,
type
you just, it's more of a request for information.
thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Just wasn't sure if budgetary quotes were allowed in municipal government, or if it had to go through an official RFP.
They are financial consultants.
Yes.
Yeah. An
Should be
RFP,
able
it's
to-
only if you intend to go to the actual purchase.
Right.
You can do all the research beforehand.
Okay. Any other questions on this one or thoughts?
No, I'm good. I'm happy that we're moving forward with it. Had a good discussion this evening, and I'm sure it'll stay on the agenda, and we'll spearhead for now until somebody else wants to take it on.
Budget Task Force seemed very interested in it as well, I would say.
Yeah.
And there's thankfully enough players on that one that can have that conversation in a bunch of different offices.
Right.
Make sure that something happens with it.
I think you can do both what you're talking about, and I think more currently is simply whoever the right person is, or right people, to go down to Enterprise and a few other banks and ask them for a higher rate for now. I mean, there's no reason why that can't be done. I mean, if we wanted to tomorrow, I mean, so I think, rates look like they're gonna start to go down, so, but still, it's important to get this done as quickly as we can. So you could do both.
I can include that in my email to the treasurer.
Yeah, and I don't know if our new acting town manager might have experience in this. I was watching him, and he seems he has a lot of experience in a lot of different things, and I don't know anything about him, but it sounds like, when you're doing all sorts of things with different places, you gain a lot of knowledge. You meet somebody and goes, oh, we did that a few years ago, and this is how we did it. So, picking that brain is probably a good thing, too.
He was at the last Budget Task Force meeting, and he I think he's going to have a lot of knowledge for that.
Yeah,
I think
good.
he'll have a lot of help for that one. He was somewhat surprised, but also not surprised that it's just so spread around. All right, that does it for this one. Thank you for sticking around. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. And we can hear you. So now you gotta stay here all the time. We'll put a cot over in the corner.
Yeah, 15 hours is enough.
You know, Ezekiel, I have a problem too with this laptop. When I sign on to Zoom, for some reason, it automatically on Zoom turns my microphone down. And if I forget to turn it up, then I get, Dave, we can't hear you.
All right, next up is, I believe, our last new agenda item, the DLS Financial Policy Manual Draft. So I reached out to the contact that the former town manager, Ms. Lemieux, gave me at DLS. She said that emailing Sean Cronin would be like emailing the governor to ask a question about some small thing. So I have not heard back from this person yet. I'm hoping to hear back soon. And then I wanted to kind of pick their brain a little bit just to see, trying to see who it was that I sent it to. Casey Bick from DLS. So once I hear back from her, I'm hoping to kind of get a little bit more information as to how it differs from ours. I did print out, and I put it in our drive, the current section of it's in our SharePoint, our current financial policies for the town itself. I have not done a side-by-side comparison yet because I was swamped at work this week, but I'm planning to print out the other one as well and just see if I can kind of match them up and do a side-by-side analysis of them. But at this point, has anybody actually read any of the draft yet?
Skim through it a lot.
Yeah, I did get into a little bit of it, and a little more of it, I should say, and didn't actually fall asleep this time.
Yeah.
Did I send you a question as to what the hell does this mean? I
don't
thought I
think so.
did, and it might have gotten lost somewhere. I think it had to do with investing in CDs, that it had to be the highest, how was it worded? The highest possible rating. It said can only be invested in a CD with the highest rating possible, I believe is how it's worded. It sounded just so ambiguous unless you know what the rating system is.
Trying to find that now. I
I've
don't.
got the document open, but
I do as well. It's on page 31 or 32.
Okay. Yeah, here it is. Must have the highest possible rating from at least one rating organization. Does that, I don't know, I read it 10 times and
Bond rating?
it makes a little bit more sense to me right at the moment, but it still seems pretty ambiguous. Because I would assume that they all have different rating systems.
Now, there's a Mass Municipal Depository Trust, we're right there.
And again, that's under money market.
Bank issued repurchase agreements. I'm sure it's some kind of,
And that is stated both for short-term and long-term funds for money market accounts.
Actually goes to this one. So reading that, it does have a section on investment objectives. And there's a priority order for the treasurer. Collector's investment objectives shall be safety is principle is foremost. And the treasurer collector will adhere to this policy's risk mitigation strategies for the purpose of preserving capital in the overall portfolio. liquidity, and then yield. Ensuring that there's short-term operating funds, enough liquidity for those, that makes sense, you can pay your bills. For trusts and other long-term funds, example, stabilization funds, cemetery perpetual care, and any similar funds set aside for long-term use, liquidity is less important than growth. The treasurer-collector will pool any individual funds that are invested in the same institution while also maintaining each fund in its own account to allow for the proper portioning of interest and any realized and unrealized gains or losses. All trust funds are under the treasurer-collector's control otherwise unless directed by their particular donors.
So Evan, what you just read says in the policy that she is allowed to
Consolidate.
pool that money in the same institution, but in our bookkeeping on Munis, God forbid, we need to keep the accounting separately. Is it that, am
No,
I
we-
interpreting correctly?
It's almost that it can be pooled in the same institution, but the accounts have to be separated in there, so they earn interest differently. So you can track the interest for the individual accounts. The treasurer-collector will pool any individual funds that are invested in the same institution, while also maintaining each fund in its own account to allow for the proper proportioning of interest.
Okay, so you could,
So it's kind of,
realistically, you could interpret that two ways,
Yeah.
I feel. One, that you keep it separate in the town's accounting, but you pool it within that one institution. For, instead of three $3 million accounts with the institution, you have a $9 million account, and on the town's books, it's separated as 3 accounts.
Well, just also, if you have 3 accounts, they may not be the same amount. They could be different amounts to get to 9,000, so they're going to earn different interest. So each one will still have a different interest amount attributed to it. She has to keep that separated with treasurers.
this is also not our current policy. This is the DLS policy.
Yes.
So we don't have this, I don't know if we have that in ours yet. I haven't read through that yet.
Right, I understand that.
For standards of care, if the town accepts there is a Mass General Law given, Chapter 44, Section 54, subsection 1B, the treasurer is authorized to pool and invest trust funds and only trust funds in accordance with the standards of care outlined in the Prudent Investor Act, Mass General Law, Chapter 203C. If the B1 subsection is not locally accepted, all investments by the treasurer must comply with the more restrictive provisions found in these other sections. The treasurer shall be relieved of personal responsibility for any individual securities credit risk or market price changes. Oh, that's just different, okay. So, I'm not sure if we have accepted that yet, but that would be something to look into as well, because we could then pool our trust funds.
Right. Yep.
I guess legally. I'd be curious to see if we're currently, because we either do it under a single one, or we have it under 4 different sections. So, I'd be willing to bet it's probably the latter. Oh, okay. This is good. And it shows a table for the type of investment for short and long-term funds. This is that section 54, subsection 1B, for what the limitations are. For CDs in Massachusetts, for short-term, your unlimited amounts and maturity of up to 3 years. Long-term funds, there's no limits. So that would,
Evan, have you got a page number on that?
page number 31 in the document, 41 on your PDF.
Okay, thank you. The only other thing I've taken from this so far in the sections I've looked at is that the exempt borrowing and regular borrowing, short-term, long-term, however you want to describe it. To my knowledge, the numbers that they have in this document are identical to what we have presently. That's kind of been hammered into our head over the past few years. But there has been discussion at different times about those numbers needing to be thoughtfully reviewed and see if they fit our needs going into the future. With the thought process that there was some feeling that those percentages needed to be increased against the overall budget. We don't have to go to those limits, but it would allow us to go to those limits. And, you know, personally, where we haven't invested in this town, infrastructure-wise, facilities-wise, however you want to describe it, at some point, we're going to have to make a very serious and large investment to get this town back to where it was 25 years ago. If we're going to ever do that, we're going to need more money than we can borrow right now.
On page 48 of ours, we actually have our financing requirements, or our investments, strategies, and rules. So that'll be good to go through as well. And includes the MMDT, the Massachusetts Municipal Depository Trust, and pooling of liquid funds in there for state, county, local, and other independent government authorities.
The other thing I have an issue with, and I reached out to town council, I don't know if the email I used was still valid or not. I haven't got a response back, and I copied the interim town manager on it, and I still have not, in 3 years, received directly the information I've requested about the original formation of the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund. Because in here, the description of that fund is totally different from the description of its creation. And it concerns me because when you adopt a document like this, sometimes it negates the original naming, which I don't think you can do in this case because town meeting is the only one that can create that type of an account. So in a document like this, you go changing it, everybody looks and say, oh yeah, that's an equipment account. Well, that's not exactly true as to what the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund is, as per the article it was created by. That's the best way I can state my concern at this point.
Do you have an idea as to when that actually took place, that vote?
I don't know why I have everything happening in 2017, but it may be before that. Honestly, I do need to, if somebody gives me a year, well, it may not have even been an annual town meeting, gives me a year and whether it was an annual town meeting or a special purpose, I'll look it up, I have no problem. But I'm not going to dig through 12 years' worth of town meeting warrants to find it.
We currently do allow up to 25% of the town's investments to be in one single financial institution. Unless that institution is investment is fully insured or collateralized, then we can go above 25%. So, I'll see what the DLS person says. Hopefully she gets back to me pretty soon, and then we can compare these two and see how they look for ideas. And I will reach out to Mylene to ask her to reach out to Bartholomew.
Yep.
And to ask our banks for a higher rate. Can I have her name drop you, Tom? Does that work in the industry? Can I have her name?
They would say, oh, yeah, sure.
Oh,
Ask
Tom.
nicely.
If Tom's asking, we can.
Yeah,
give him
Tom's
3 times.
asking.
Tom who? All right. Anything else on this one for now?
I'm good.
Okay. Oops. Don't know if there's an update on the town manager search committee. Chris isn't here, so as far as I had heard last time, they were interviewing candidates. No, they weren't interviewing. I'm not sure. I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm not quite sure where they are. I can't remember if I heard that they are interviewing candidates or if they're not interviewing candidates yet.
For the permanent position?
Correct.
I'm not going to speak to it because I think I've missed a good part of the last meeting, but in my head, the last thing they did was talk with the potential
Consulting firm.
contracting service.
Right.
Contracted
They're looking
service. And at that point, they didn't know that, and this was 12 days after we voted, at that point, they hadn't been notified that we actually approved.
I saw part of that, yeah.
Yeah.
They thought it was 17,000 at one point.
Yeah, they were kicking numbers around, and I'm thinking, wait a minute now.
Yeah. All right. Budget task force, as far as that goes, we basically went over everything that we did in there. Renee put together a search of different towns, and actually, I meant to do this, I apologize for not sending this out. I'll send out the presentation that she and Ezekiel put together. I don't have the school department's one. It's probably in the drive. I'll pull that out and send it around as well. Obviously, it's far less because it's all title money and grant money and reimbursement money. But Ezekiel had his own search criteria to pull out comparative towns. Heather had hers that she works with for negotiating, and then Renee had her own that she put together. And out of all of those, the only one that all three of them had was Groton. So there's not too many, but if you compared Renee's and Ezekiel's, there were some interesting data that kind of came out of it. And I think it's going to take a deeper dive into sort of what the reasoning is behind that, what the causes are behind that. But Renee, I see that you're on the call, so please, if I get this inverse proportionality wrong, correct me. The big find was that the towns that had the lowest tax rate tended to have the highest, I believe it was the highest state aid. So that as the tax rate went down, the state aid went up. And that seemed to carry all the way through.
Tax levy, Evan.
Tax levy, just kidding. Thank you. The
welcome.
green one was the state, or the other one was the state aid. She had all three in there. It was
Yeah.
50-50 shot. All right, so tax levy went up. As the total levy went up, then the aid went down.
Right. Yep.
So,
Yeah, there was a lot of great information in that part of the meeting with all those spreadsheets.
yeah, we'll make sure to push that around. Grant writing services, I put in a call, but I got a voicemail to that company. I don't remember what the name of the company was. It was 2 meetings ago now. Bailey Boyd Associates out of Situate. So I have not heard back from them yet either. So I'll give them another call.
And please refresh my memory as to why we're calling them.
They are a company that is in Massachusetts that does grant services, municipal grant services. It was a Google search that I did.
Okay, are we looking for something specific, I guess, is what I'm a little confused about. 'Cause-
It was just to say, hey, we have appropriated some money in our last town meeting
Right.
to make use of grant writing services. We have no idea what we're doing now. Could you point us in a couple directions, or at least, what's the process? What's your contract process look like? What does it look like for you guys to do?
Yeah.
just because they're local. There's a whole bunch of national ones as well, but I'd rather go with someone local that knows Mass General Law a little bit better.
While we're talking about that line item, I was just trying to clear this up in my head the other day. I'm assuming where this is a line item in the general government portion of the budget, that it is controlled by the town manager. Okay, so any services paid for out of that would be administered by the town manager. Okay, I think, to tell you the truth, we had this conversation about the, how it's going to be administered and stuff. I don't think that that's anything we need to get involved in, because it's already under general government. It's the town manager's purview to deal with that. I think just departments, committees, entities, whatever, should be formulating a proposal. Hey, we have these 4 or 5 grant possibilities that we've looked at that seem to be appropriate for what we're trying to accomplish. Can we put a proposal together to the town manager to get services to identify for sure that they're appropriate, and then go forward with applying for them? I kind of came up with that scenario as how we could get this thing rolling.
That was how Heather had kind of foreseen it as well in one of her last meetings, that she had said that a proposal process, but I don't think a document ever was put together.
Yeah.
This was this was sort of more to do kind of like what Mr. Leighton was doing, and just start the ball rolling a little bit and get a little
And
conversation.
get an understanding of how
And
it's
then-
done in general.
Happily go, here you go.
Yep.
I talked to these people and they recommend this process for pulling together interest from your department heads, and then going out and doing your RFPs or whatever it is.
Right.
That's kind of what I'm hoping to get from them.
Yeah.
But I'll reach out to them again.
And what that should help with too is take some pressure off of the office up here in this building with multiple RFPs going out for grants and so on. That would be handled by this service.
We don't really do RFPs for grants. They're applications.
I've never seen one, I don't know.
Usually it's an application process, from my understanding, to apply for the grant, and there's criteria that you have to meet.
Yeah, what would the RFP be for with the grant?
I may have misspoke on that. I'll have to think that back through. Well, the RFP would be to hire the
The service.
entity that's going to pursue the grants,
Right.
to do the work. And ask any of the present volunteers in this town that have gone through grant processes, especially, and I'll name her, Karen Menard, what she's gone through to get
Yeah.
the grants that the Parks Commission has gotten.
A lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and you gotta know what you're doing, and she learned as she went.
That's what grant writing service would be for. I would hope grant writing service would, if we have a project or a list of projects, they would be able to say, we're familiar with this one, we're not familiar with this one. As a town, you're not going to qualify for this one, but you might qualify for that one. This is the easier one to go for, that's the harder one. You should be
Exactly.
able
Yep.
to offer some sort of advice.
Honestly, personally, I think that's gonna be really important for the future of Marshall Park. That, there's gonna need to be a lot of energy put into, and they've done a lot already, but with the final number that's floating out there right now, every dollar, even if it's a $25,000 grant, is gonna help to get that project to fruition. And I'll have that conversation with the Parks Commission when they meet later this month.
All right, any other topics on that one? I'll reach out to Carter as well, the interim town manager, and just kind of make sure he has it in the back of his head. He's been here a
And
week
again,
now.
what's nice, as it was mentioned before, you know, someone like Carter or whoever we put in that position, he's there now, but my thought process was when we were looking at that, is that you're bringing in a person that has experience from multiple towns within the state, so their experiences with similar issues in other towns is going to help us tenfold to move forward until such time as we have a permanent town manager.
Agreed. All right,
The cost, because we have $50,000. So what is this, what would be their fee schedule for doing a grant?
that was another one I was gonna ask. Yeah, does it all get shot on one single grant? And that's what $50,000 buys us? I have no idea.
Heather got that number from reaching out to a couple of her contacts as to what was a good starting number.
I remember her saying she just kind of picked it because it's what fit in the budget.
Well, I heard something different. but-
Okay. Knowing Heather, I would think that it would be more what you said.
Right, yeah. She doesn't usually throw a dart at the wall.
No.
She never threw a dart at the wall and said, okay, that's the number.
Which is why it caught me off guard that I remember her saying that, because
Right.
that doesn't sound like what you normally do.
Right.
Okay, consolidation of services and departments, again, I'm happy to skip over that one for this week, unless anybody has any,
No, I think that's good for a future
yeah,
discussion, a much broader discussion.
agreed. Review of the budget process and suggestions for improvement. I do want to go over the calendar that Heather had sent out before, because I do want to bring it to Carter with sort of our opinions on it and our thought process on it, and see what he has to say about it as well. I don't think I pulled that one up. Of course, now I can't find it in the drive.
So, 7:10 email,
7:10?
Wednesday, 7:10. Draft budget calendar.
Oh, because I'm in my sent mail. Oh, geez, that explains it. Okay. There we go. Thank you, Jay.
Yep.
All right, so we are 5 days away from the select board vote on the special town meeting date and opening and closing the warrant. It's coming up very quickly.
Special town meeting.
Yep. Yeah, the warrant opens, apparently on Oh, no, I take it back. They're voting on
Opening.
when they're gonna open it. But it's gonna open the next day, on Wednesday.
14th.
On the 14th, right. I do know that capital plan is about a month ahead, I believe, roughly, is what they're trying to do this year. They're trying to be done early, so that will help with things. I did receive an email from the superintendent asking about our planned meeting with them next year for FY '26 for their budget review. And it looks like it's probably going to be right around that March 20th, March 19th again, same thing. So we may be right, it may not really matter what we do in terms of everything else if we have about 55% of the budget being presented to us again a few days before our report is due. Our public hearing is still scheduled for the 27th of March. And then our report is due that coming Tuesday. So I think for me, that is probably one of the biggest things that needs to be different. We cannot have a public hearing and then a report due before our next meeting, before we have a meeting after the public hearing. I don't see how that is reasonable.
Right.
Because we have not had a chance to even discuss what happened at the public hearing.
I think as has been mentioned by a couple of people, I think we need to find out or work with whoever ends up, well, we're not gonna be able to do it for this year because of the turnover we've got. But for the next year, for 2026 budget, I think we need to really find out how these other towns bring their budgets to town meeting in March and April. I mean, they're working with the same information that's available to us at those times. Why are they able to bring a budget together that works and gets voted on, and we can't? You know, as you know, the excuses have been, well, the state budget doesn't even get finalized, this, that, and the other thing. Well, so what? If these other towns, cities and towns can do it, and their budget works, and you still have November for the adjustments, what's the problem here?
I mean, ideally you leave town meeting with a balanced budget. I know you don't have to, but ideally you leave town meeting with a balanced budget. There's nothing, I don't believe there's anything that states that you have to use finalized numbers, and that's kind of the idea, is that you're always going to use different numbers. That's where you fix things at special town meeting.
Exactly.
There's no reason you can't use the governor's original budget proposal as your starting point, your benchmark.
Yep.
And everything else is fixed after they sign the budget in July, August, whenever it ends up being.
It's always late.
Right, exactly. So you're never going to have,
They just completed it.
exactly, you're never going to have a finalized version until you're getting close to special town meeting. So I think if we use the plan of your budget that you work off of for all of your revenue, for all of your cherry sheet money, for all of your title money, all of your chapter money, is based off of the governor's initial proposal, and that's it. Any other numbers after that, as you get them, you can plug them in, or you just don't even, or you don't, and you make do with it as you need to in the special town meeting.
Right. Because a budget by definition is only an estimate.
Right.
So you estimate it with this much data, or you estimate it with this much data. That seems to be the only difference, really. I mean, if we budgeted a year in arrears, then it would be simple.
So
So that, I guess, would be a question for the interim town manager is what is his practice for his budget? Does he use, when does he start? Obviously, he's going to have his requests from his department heads, and that's happening ideally in the fall. But once he gets down to the revenue side of things, what's the plan? When does he usually have it kind of compiled by?
And it'll be interesting to hear from him if he can share it with us, if he's had the experience in another town that does bring their budget forward in March or April.
In his initial interview, that question was asked, how long to prepare a budget, and he said 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
And he's here for January 14th to present to the select board.
Well, this was from Heather still. I don't know if he's subscribing to this
Oh, well,
schedule.
that's right, this is right, so he could be adjusting this.
Correct. I would be fine if he doesn't see this and comes up with one that starts in now. And we get presentations in January and February.
Guess what, department heads, I want your numbers next week.
Yeah. That's what you have your financial forecast for, and your historical values. Okay. I will request then for our next meeting to have Carter kind of give an explanation for his idea of the budget process, just so we have an idea, I think by then he'll have at least
He
been,
anticipates happening.
he'll have been here for 3 weeks by then, so he'll have plenty of experience, plenty of time. Everything's solved.
We're also short-staffed,
Right,
major departments.
yeah.
Okay, next.
So as far as other ways that we can affect or we can change or get us a faster budget process. Right now, our budget season, we meet every Thursday for 6 weeks, I believe. And then our last week, we have 2 meetings, a Wednesday and a Thursday, and then we have the hearing the week after. Is there, I mean, we could potentially go, actually, no, we couldn't, because there's, one, I wouldn't want to have double up meetings, and 2, there's other committees and boards meeting in here as well.
Yeah. There are other factors involved,
Right, it's not just us.
right? There's also weather and,
That's true, it is February. It's nice and warm and balmy. I would certainly be open to kind of restructuring how we do our presentations, how we receive the budget presentations from the department heads. I'm curious, I know we like to give it as a chance for a platform to kind of promote the different departments and what they're doing, especially, some of the ones that are citizen or resident facing, your council on aging, your library. And I fully support that, but at the same time, the shorter we can make the meetings, and if we could triple up instead of just double up, we could go through them in a third the time, or 2/3 the time.
I totally agree. We don't need a repeat of the history of the last 5 years of a given department, you know what I'm talking about. Yes, we want the comparative
trends.
numbers as much as possible, but I'm talking about their services and this, that, and the other thing. That's how they run their department. We don't, during that season, we don't need that. We need the numbers and what supports those numbers.
But what supports those numbers oftentimes is that superlative data.
depending on the department.
Right, the fire department's gonna want another ambulance when that EMT keeps on climbing and then goes exponential all of a sudden.
Yeah, but I think you agree that the presentations have gotten much longer than they need to be over the last couple of years. That's my feeling anyway. Stick to
They
what
only come here once a year to do that.
justifies your requests and your budget requests, and stick with that.
What if, instead of giving free rein, we develop our own preferred presentation format?
You do that?
And then that way it's standardized, everybody has it, you're limited to the 12 slides that we give you. Pack as much, or whatever it is, whether it's a number of slides, whether it's, we request that this is where your historical data goes and here's how much historical data we want to see. And that way we kind of give every department sort of an even approached look at what they're doing.
Or you could just give them a time limit and say, okay, these are the things we want to know, and we want to the presentation portion should be no longer than X minutes. So let them figure out what's important. And then, of course, then after that, then we can ask questions, and it could last 3 hours if we have lots of questions, but their presentation should be boiled down to something. I think giving, if they're responsible people, which they are, giving them the parameters, what we want, and the time limit would be good for them.
Are we going to really cut them off, though? If they start getting, if we're 20 minutes over?
Get the music to play?
Clock.
You don't, what was that thing from many years ago? You don't play off Frank Sinatra. You don't play off the police department.
If we're going to do either of those, we should probably start working on them immediately. The time limit one, I think we would have more time with. But I think it might make sense to at least have a more structured approach to those meetings. I think we could probably work them down into shorter time frames, and then I think we really could possibly get 3 at a time. They're already ungodly long meetings, but I would almost rather have 5 ungodly long meetings than 8 ungodly long meetings and give us an extra time to actually write something up. Plus, that would give, if we did it that way, we could still take the time in those other meetings to hold public hearings, to invite department heads back if we have more questions about something, as other things change. I think the more compressed we can get that into the February and early March timeframe, the better. Other ideas for how we can compress this?
Well, why don't we consult with the interim town manager before we get too carried away?
We'll just take off the publication of general summary of budget by the town manager and all that other stuff. We'll just start crossing things off.
Tell the town manager in the school district, we will only entertain one iteration of the budget. So get it right the first time, because we're not going to listen to 5 more.
budgets again.
I have a feeling that the school department will happily acquiesce to that request.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is enough. I agree, Jay. I think at this point, we have enough that we can go off of. And I think next step is we need the person who's actually going to build the schedule to come in. So I will reach out to Carter again and see if we can get him in for the next meeting.
Like I said before, this year's going to be another one of those unusual years where, if we can accomplish compressing some of it this year, then it theoretically should be a breeze next year if we've settled into a new town manager and the processes get started on time and so on and so forth.
All right. that's the end of our main agenda items. We have minutes in the drive from July 25th.
Yep.
Anybody have a chance to read them?
Yep.
Anybody have any issues with them?
Anybody else?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Committee reports. Want to head on down the line? Dave, any committee reports?
Yeah, Green Communities hasn't met this month yet. Kind of the sticking to the first Monday of August kind of fell by the wayside. So we're presently scheduled for the third Monday, whatever that is.
The Monday after the 15th, I think is what Mr. Blatt said last night.
Something like that, yeah, yeah. Where was he talking?
School committee. He was asking
Yeah,
the school
last
committee
night.
for
The other night.
projects.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I missed one of the meetings I
Yep.
did miss.
It's all right, the audio was terrible at the first 20 minutes I heard it.
Yeah.
Other than that, we've had some conversations with Mr. Heavy, another member of the committee, myself and Kelly Brown had a Zoom meeting with Mr. Heavy, trying to help him more thoroughly understand the process and how we might be able to bring probably Phase 2 of the mini-split project forward for funding Phase 1. And the best we could suggest there was incentives through Unitil, which should be pretty substantial if they, get the information, and I think Unitil's got the information. So when you're dealing with the Green Communities grant process, you can also apply for any incentives that are available through your supplier, which for us is Unitil. And I was going to qualify something, but anyway.
Mass Save, was that Mass Save?
I don't believe the incentives come through Mass Save. I think they're directly from Unitil through state incentive programs that Unitil administers. So I know for the streetlight project, those incentives saved us at the end of the day because we had a $30,000 upcharge when we found defective wiring on many of the poles. So, that influx of additional revenue for that project really saved us at the end of the day. So it's above and beyond grant monies, and Mass Save is more towards the individual consumer, and there should be an awful lot of rebate programs and incentives coming through them from the federal government through DORE, I think I got that right, and then administered through Mass Save over the next year or so. So that's where we're at this point. I have a couple members looking into some other directions for Green Communities to also be putting some energy. That's it for me.
Ms. Russell?
Nope.
Mr. Gray?
On the select board, did they, I was watching it, but I wasn't 100% sure, did they rescind that communication?
They did.
They did, okay, that's what, I
It
thought I
served its
heard that. I
purpose,
wasn't-
and now it's been
Yeah.
rescinded.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Which we were talking about at our last meeting.
So luckily, it doesn't affect us anymore. Although, I still think it would have. I know Mr. Menard said it
Well,
didn't, but
hopefully, I understand a policy like that, so if they want to go back to that, obviously that would be a proper thing to do, but
in the proper way,
in the proper way.
with the proper number of votes,
Right.
and not for,
Just a guideline.
it's like speed limits.
Says you need 4, you can use 3.
It's a
you know, that's
suggestion.
all you got.
Speed limits,
It's like the yellow lines in the road.
Maybe then shotguns, yeah.
I did hear that the Municipal Building Design Committee is going to be meeting soon. I don't know if you know that.
I got an email from Mr. Jeffries about something, and I had, that'd be good.
Because you guys have 350, or 250, or $350,000 to spend.
250.
250?
I
250.
was gonna say it's in the two somethings.
You have a lot of money to spend.
Yeah.
That I know Ms. MP is just
Some of the
itching
members
for.
of the select board are
Wanna
itching
pull
to
it
pull
back.
that back
Yeah,
if
pull it
you
back.
guys don't start spending it
Well,
soon.
we'll-
I think that they should have
Jeff
it.
decided he should have a
I've
meeting.
never had a problem spending money, so.
Be careful, though, that's, never mind. I'm not gonna say what I was about to say, because it was incorrect.
I think the select board should have a drop dead date of like October 1st. If it's not spent, you better have a darn good reason for why it's not spent, and we're taking it back.
Right.
It's getting close.
Yeah. And actually, I was looking at the document that, the outgoing town manager sent of what's left and what hasn't been spent.
It's committed.
Yeah, there's a lot that's not spent yet.
Somebody has a handout.
I don't know who JB is, but we're not in the middle of public comment yet.
I've got a couple more things when you get done with that, when everybody's done with the committee reports.
No, because I don't have it up anymore. That's all right. So yes, apparently you will be having a meeting soon. So that'll be good. You guys haven't met since November.
Another meeting to sit on.
Exactly. Mr. Simeone, any updates?
No. I've listened to a few things, but
Okay. I attended the school committee meeting last night. They had some advisors come in to discuss with them budgeting practices and strategies and methods, and I think it was pretty good. I think they're going to be helpful for this year. Also, they have their director of finance, who is a very capable and smart woman. I think that will be helpful as well. Not saying that Dr. Burnham isn't, but this is an actual finance person, which would be helpful. And then they also went over a letter that they are drafting to send to us and to the select board and to the town manager. Here you go, budgeting is just an estimate. The Chapter 70 funds are going to be, I believe it's about $31,000 or $38,000 more than what we had budgeted for. And they are requesting that it get put towards the schools directly by the town manager. So they're going to be sending us a letter just for our discussion and ideally our support as well, that the funds go to them specifically since it is earmarked for schools.
Does that have to be appropriated by town meeting, or does it just flow into the budget through another process? I always get lost as to which way money comes in.
It flows into the budget and then it just has to be fixed by a special town meeting.
Okay.
But it just usually it just comes into the budget in general and it kind of historically has just kind of trickled in.
Did they say what they were gonna get in the letter? Would it include what they're gonna spend it on, or was just give us the money and we'll figure it out?
I think that's a very valid question. I think that's a question worth
It wasn't.
asking.
Is Chapter 70 unrestricted? I don't remember.
I don't know.
Again, I've gotten lost in restricted, unrestricted.
These are all good questions to ask the school committee once they send the
Right.
letter over.
Right.
Other than that, that's all I have.
Okay, I've got two
committed
quick,
funds is in July 26th email.
What's that?
July 26th email, you sent us committed funds for ARPA.
Oh, the one that we have?
Rich, yeah.
Yeah, it's grim. I'm sure that that's gotten a little bit better now, the committed funds and the spent funds for ARPA, but it's a lot of money still sitting in accounts.
yeah. Mr. Chair, I've got two questions, basically. First one, who is our liaison to the fire department?
Ms. Russell.
You are, okay. I would request that you have a conversation with the fire chief and bring to us anything he would like to share with us relative to the concerns brought forward by the firefighters union on Tuesday. Apparently, there's some discourse there as to amount of hours and forced work hours, which is in their contract if shifts aren't covered. I'd like a better understanding of that because it's, I don't know, it's just hitting me that there's some issues there that need to be addressed into the next budget season, if not before. I'd just like to have a handle on that, if we could. The other question is directly to the chair. You announced a few weeks ago that you had been, you had a request from the DPW director for you and the vice chair to meet with him. Are we going to get a synopsis of the content of that meeting?
If that meeting had happened, I would absolutely give you a synopsis of that meeting.
Okay.
I made the mistake of going into work that day and couldn't come back in time to meet with him. And then we tried to set it up on a Thursday, and we have not rescheduled it.
Oh, okay, fine. I wasn't
So,
aware of that.
Yeah, I would have happily sent that out, but I have not actually met with him, the poor guy.
Okay, and when is he scheduled to come to us?
I'm actually gonna hope to have him here in 2 weeks.
Okay.
That's my goal. So I will reach out to him again after this meeting, send him an email, see if he's available for that night, and then see if I can meet with him and Mr. Bernard on a Monday coming up.
Okay. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay. For topics for future meetings, I have our interim town manager on the budget process for the next meeting, and I had already written down Chapter 90 DPW presentation for the next meeting ideally. For the meeting after that on the 12th of September, I would hope that our investments have been closed out for FY24, so I'm going to invite the treasurer, Mylene, and we can talk about other investment stuff by then as well. We'll have had a month in between, so hopefully we have some more information by then. I'll have asked her about Bartholomew and all of that fun stuff. Any other topics for future meetings coming up? Do we want to start I guess, depending upon how our meeting goes with Mr. Terenzini on our next meeting, I guess that kind of determines how we want to do budget season for presentations or timeframes or whatnot. So we'll probably want to put that on for the 12th as well. Anything else anybody's dying to talk about? All right. Next meeting is on the 22nd of August, and then it's into September already, the 12th. And we will be right into special town meeting warrant stuff.
Fun.
With that, is there any public comment from the committee at the end?
Yeah, I've got one quick thing too. It's already been announced, I believe, but just to air it one more time so the public hears it from a couple of different sources, and I don't know how many on this committee are aware, of 2 resignations within the past week, both in the sewer department. The chair, John Reynolds, has resigned. I think, I kind of have in the back of my mind that that's at the end of the month. I don't think that's immediate, but I'm not positive about that. I didn't have a good connection when that was all announced. And I was told today through the grapevine that the sewer commission's administrative assistant resigned Tuesday evening after the select board meeting. So we are
The sewer
imploding,
business manager.
continuing to implode.
Thank you. Any other public comment from the committee? All right, public comment from the public. JB, you've had your hand up for a while. I apologize, but feel free to unmute.
Yeah, don't worry about it, Evan. It's John Bowen. How are you? Sorry, it says JB on there. 162 Highland Street, John Bowen. I just wanted to mention a couple of things. I want to begin by thanking Anna Lockwood for that reminder. I think people fall short of that reminder that everybody is inclusive. Are you able to hear me okay?
It's a little bit tough.
Yeah, you speak up.
Okay. Yeah, so I just want to say thank you to Anna Lockwood for her quotes and for her statement tonight. That was excellent. Not necessarily with regard to the issue, but with regard to, how things should be handled, for the people, by the people, not in politics, but in people. That's how our government should work. On a couple of other issues I have, maybe you guys should think about a forensic accounting firm that might be necessary to help direct the financial direction into what the best investment is by taking an overall look, as though if you were going to have an audit, have somebody come in and just kind of look through everything and figure out what the best financial direction is. Just a suggestion. Mr. Passios, just so you know, the law is very vague on the graves and their age. Usually the ones that are older than 100 years are the responsibility of the town. As well, Chapter 114 says those graves that are no longer cared for by family, that tax money can be appropriated. So the tax money can be appropriated for both of those things, which there is $20,000 of tax money with the DPW for cemeteries. That money, I spoke at town meeting when I was talking about reimbursement, was for those graves, which probably calculate about 2,500 of our total of roughly around 5,000 graves that we have. And Evan, if you remember, I requested a specific use of the money that was being allocated by the Cemetery Commission, the $10,000, that I wanted it to be identified for what that money would be specifically used for. The outline that was presented tonight by Ezekiel was excellent. However, it said that money can be used for day-to-day operations. Well, this is not what that money is meant for, if you read the statute, which he posted the statute above that. I don't know where that day-to-day operations word came in, but that word is in the charter that is directed through the town manager, through the department of the DPW is responsible for day-to-day operations, or with the oversight of the town manager. Rob Oliver, when he was here, he was a director about 4 years ago. He asked for $10,000 from our taxes for the cemeteries. Prior to that money for the cemetery, the only money that they were basically using was for the wages of the superintendent, which came through the DPW department. And they used interest money from the perpetual care fund. The other money that was used for the building, the niche wall and stuff like that, yep, that was all in the sale of lots fund and so forth, okay? However, the reason why I raised that is because there was still money that was appropriated about a year ago to be able to do an engraving on a bench on a personal lot. For a personal owner, and the foundation was built for that personal owner as well, and that is not extended to a lot of the different citizens here who have lots that need foundations repaired and stuff like that. The Cemetery Commission is not paying for that, but they did use money from the sale of lots fund last year to be able to do that engraving and that foundation on a citizen's private lot. That's a little patronage, I think, with that regard. The other issue is that the money that is talked about using gas and so forth to be supplied, that originally came out of the perpetual care money, but Rob got that $10,000, that stopped, okay? Rob got a $10,000 taxes from us for the cemeteries. And then Bill Bernard came on board. He acquired an additional tax expense for $10,000, making DPW have a $20,000 budget for the cemeteries. Now, the $10,000 from the sale of lots is not clarified for its use. And this year, they did use it for day-to-day maintenance and operation, for grass cutting. That's operations. Now, we have 2 lawnmowers, but we only have 1 operating because we don't have 2 qualified operators. We can't put a part-time guy into a lawnmower. Now, if you remember, when I asked the town meeting about the specific costs for the labor for the cemeteries, Evan, you gave me those numbers. I was working with Bill and with Heather trying to get those numbers. That with the opposition of misinformation, disinformation being screamed at me by our banshee, Ms. Yasko, I was quite clear that the cost of the superintendent in 2 workers that would come at a worker's wage, which by collective bargaining agreement is roughly about $65,000 a worker to $86,000, depending upon where we're at right now, okay, for those labor. That's $300,000 a year to have 3 qualified workers there. That would put 2 men in the machine and 1 man with a weed whacker. And that would suffice for our cemeteries. I also made clear the need for the cemetery above what the town can actually afford, which you heard today. Look at all the expenses. And Mr. Bernard also agrees that the new lot at the last cemetery committee in the North Cemetery agrees with me that it needs to be one complete project. You can't just do it piecemeal. It's impossible. You have to do it from start to completion, and that is a huge expense. And even capital plan doesn't have the money for that. It's just not affordable, as well as all the other needs that the cemeteries need, the grub problem and everything else. They're not affordable, okay? Now, I have requested that to call in the Cemetery Association of Massachusetts for a consult, which is only a $500 expense. Now, they'll give you a great review. They'll give you a good consultation. They do it for everybody. They do it around the world, okay? As well as exploring a cemetery corporation option, okay, through, you know, a consultation for that, okay? Now, I understand the cemetery corporation, the government can't start it, but that doesn't mean that you can't give the responsibility to the people to say that this is what we need to put together and this is what we should be working on because we consulted on it because it was in the best interest of our people who are interred, okay? And then the last but not least thing that I wanted to touch base on is that the Chapter 90 funding is part of the roads for the cemetery. I cleared that out with Bill when I had a conversation with him last year, that the DPW does own all the roads in the cemetery. Chapter 90 money can be used for that, and I'm sure he'll tell you that at next week's meeting. And lastly, which this gets tooted a lot by your cemetery commissioner about how she's such a veteran supporter, but she forgot this entire clause. Chapter 115, Section 9, under the Veterans Benefit Statute in Massachusetts, says that the state must, they shall, it requires the town to appoint a veteran to care for all the veteran graves, and that cost can come from the town tax or through private donation. It's in a statute. So all the graves, which are about 1,000, I think, veterans that we have in that cemetery, okay, we can acquire money through donations to be able to hire somebody to come in and take care of all 1,000 of those cemeteries, as well as get a 75% credit on all brand new flags. It's in the statute. And so if everybody just wants to do a little bit of reading, stop ignoring who I am and listen to what I have to say, you'd be very surprised, right, that, you know, you actually have the information. I keep handing it to you, but you all keep ignoring it. And I hope that that will soon end and cease. And I don't have an MBA. I decided to go to Emerson College. I kind of like history and art a lot better. So, you know, that's where my credentials come from. But I've always run my own business. So I know what I'm talking about with money, and I've done pretty good sustaining my own life for the last 40 years. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And that's the end of my public comment. I'd like to thank you all. Tonight was an excellent meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment from the public? Seeing none, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, 9:52, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.